G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today, well, we're going to be checking out this. Now, this is a tilt rotor from VectorQuads, and you're probably seeing a couple of things. Number one, this thing is massive. So, this thing does some things very differently to most quads out there today. So let me just show you this. Woo! That's right, so it's got its arms that rotate on a servo, so you can rotate the rotors, which is going to be fantastic for that forward momentum flight, so I can't wait to see how that handles in the air. And another thing that I'm super stoked about, this bad boy here actually can convert to a tri. Now, I've never built a tricopter before, so I'm super excited about turning it into a tri as well. Anyway, enough rambling about me, let's chuck it on the bench and have a look at the frame and see how she goes. Alrighty, so here's everything that comes in the kits, and I say kits because this is kind of probably one of the most interesting quads I have actually reviewed for the frame, because this is not only a quadcopter, but we've also got the option to turn it into a tricopter, and we'll talk about all these things in detail, but we'll quickly just go over what I've got here. So we've got our top plate and bottom plate just here, very interesting. We've got some round arms, which are crucial to this build. We've got these two parts, I guess, I don't know what to call those, but I guess these brackets are here to sort of hold the frame together and also hold the arms. You got some Velcro straps. You're going to get some camera holders, so your FPV camera and also your sort of action camera. And then this is where stuff gets interesting. So you don't normally see this in a quad. So we've got some servos right here, which we'll talk about in a minute. Just here you've got a whole bunch of mounting options and a way to hold your motors on, and a whole bunch of sort of important hardware that you're going to be using when you're building the frame. And then this very exciting part just here as well. This is actually the little conversion kit, so you can turn this quadcopter into a tricopter. So that's kind of what drew me to this, actually, is that you could turn this bad boy into one of these tricopters. So there's some things that this sort of kit does. I don't have to call it a quadcopter or a tricopter, I'm not sure, but there's some things that this kit does that I'm really excited to test out, and does some things in some really interesting ways. Anyway, let's jump through and look at the bare frame first, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the kit. Alright, so here's the bare essentials of the frame, I guess. And just looking at this thing, this is probably the longest quadcopter I have ever seen. So just have a look at, here's a bit of a comparison. Say, here's my Epi 210. Look at the size difference. This thing is pretty much, this plate here is almost double the length, so it is a massive frame. So if we actually measure it here, it is coming in the longest, so this is the bottom plate, it is coming in at 240 millimeters long, so a very long frame. But in saying that, yes, this is long, but this thing feels like a tank. Like, this is a very thick bottom plate and also a top plate. That's some of the first things I noticed. So they're coming in at, well, 3 millimeters, so that is how thick the top plate and the bottom plate are. So this thing is pretty much going to be like a tank driving around. Imagine you can just crash this through a brick wall. No, but this thing seriously will be an absolute tank. It's going to be very hard to break those plates. If we have a look here at the arms, and this is something I'm also very excited about, this is the first time I've ever reviewed a frame that has sort of these tubular arms, these circle arms just here. And the reason this is so interesting is because, well, they're crucial to how this build works, because it works on sort of a rotor system, tilting system, which we'll talk about it in a bit as well. But when something is in a tube shape, it is very strong. So no matter which angle you have an impact on, and when you have that sort of a tube as an arm, it is going to be very strong and resistant to crashes. So these, I guess, these components right here are going to be extremely difficult to break. So if you're after a frame that's going to be a bit of a tank, I think that's what I'm going to name this thing, the tank, then this could definitely be the one for you. Now there's some other parts here. So here we've just got a little mounting option for our FPV camera. Nothing too special about this one. It's probably just going to sit in the front of the frame. You've got some options to screw it in or zip tie it down, but I don't think most people are using these sort of board cameras anymore, so it would be nice to include something that might cater for like a HS1177. And then on the top here, I know a lot of people have moved away from these recently too. This is sort of the standard old sort of fashioned little sort of anti-vibration GoPro mount thing that people would put on top of their frames, but a lot of days people usually just mount something like this nowadays straight to the frame, so some things like this can be a little bit redundant, but it's still a nice option to have if you want to rock a Mobius or something like that. Now this is another part of the kit, and I guess this is what's replacing the standoffs. So most frames have standoffs. These actually have these injection molded plastic pieces, and what they do, they serve as two purposes. So they're going to be the standoffs, excuse me, that sort of hold the frame together, so it's going to be sitting on each other like that. and so it looks like it's going to be very, very tough. But another thing it does, it has these sort of little holes just here cut out that it is also going to hold your arms at the same time, so your arms are going to slide through there. So these are very, very interesting because I actually do something special with the servos that allow the arms to rotate during flight, and we will talk about that. So these sort of serve as two purposes, but being injection mold and plastic, they look really, really well produced, and I think they're going to be very, very tough indeed. Now you do get all the hardware that comes with this kit, and something that I love, this is the first company actually that I've seen this happen with, that I can recall anyway, you actually get a set of Allen keys, or the ones you're going to use during this build. So that is fantastic to see, because I know they'll be a big help to some people out there. Look, I've got some of these already, but if you didn't have these or you're a first time builder, that is definitely something really, really nice. So big props to them, big props to them for including these, but so you get a whole bunch of hardware as well. Anyway, I'm going to put these sort of bare essentials together just so you can see what the frame is going to look like, I guess, if it's mocked up in its very, very basic form. So I'm going to cut to what that looks like when I put that together right here. Alrighty, so here it is all built, just to give you sort of a rough idea, and I'm going to have to take this apart anyway to build it, so that's why I don't have all the screws in. Plus, I put this part, I'm pretty sure I've got this one upside down, this rear plate just here. Anyway, what I am worried about though is just how heavy this thing might be. So let's stick it on the scales at the moment, and this is just with the bare minimum, and not even with the little mounting options on the outside. It's already coming in at 144 grams. So I think this thing might be a little bit of a heifer. Anyway, let's keep going on with the review, and we'll have a look at some of the mounting options that it comes with. Alrighty, so I've got sort of the mounting options and the plastic parts that come with it, and I've got to say, this is not 3D printed plastic. This is all injection molded, which means it's going to be very, very tough. You're going to have a very hard time breaking some of these. So let's look at what we've got. And I've broken it up into 3 sections. So the first part, I guess, of these parts are rubber. The first part that is very self-explanatory, these are just your vibration dampeners that are going to be used to hold down your Mobius or something like that. So they just go in and they slide inside these little plates just here, inside these little holes, and we've all seen these before, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about those ones, so I'll put them to the side. This part here is probably the interesting part. So here is how we're going to be, these are sort of the parts where your motors are going to mount to, and so these are on the outside right here, and they're going to clamp over the edge of your motors. And the way they work is you're going to be putting, it's got a little hole matched up in the top and the bottom. You're going to slide that over these little tubes right here, and that's going to clamp down, so it should be very, very secure. Now, something I have just noticed with these just here, now I have been planning to put on sort of to give this thing a bit of a run for its money, so I'm going to be putting on some Emax Red Bottoms 2600 KVs on this bad boy, and when I went to go put them in here, the 22s don't actually fit. So it looks like these little ones just here have been designed for 1806 motors, so that's what I'm going to have to run. The only way I can see about getting around that is I think I'm going to have to run my motors on the outside just here, so I'm going to have to flip these upside down when it comes time to building and run my motors on the outside. Moving along to this section right here, now these are the little clamps that are going to go on your little tubes, and these are going to be very important because that's going to adjust the pitch, I guess, or help rotate the arm, so when they're swiveling, so that's what those are. And you actually just have here, these parts are for the servo, so this is where your servo is going to mount to, and this is going to be the rod that the servo is moving up and down. Alright, there's just a few more things in the kit that I want to show you guys, and then we'll move on. Alright, and the last little things in the kit that I want to talk about, of course you get some little standoffs and nylon nuts and those sorts of little bits of hardware, but depending if you get the tri or the quad, or maybe you get the conversion kit as well, you're going to get 1 or 2 servos. Now look, to be honest, I don't have too much experience with servos. This is the first time they're going to be using them. But from what I've seen, they've got more than enough power to go on the tail of the tri or to rotate the arms. Anyway, this one's going to be a bit of an interesting video because I'm going to have to build a quad and then also take it out, fly it around, and then build a tri. So we're going to just cut to the scene. I'm going to build this thing up, put it all together. So we're going to be looking at the quad first when that's all built, and then we'll be having a look at the tri and looking at some of the flight footage. All right. So I guess the next time you hear me talking or rambling on, we're going to have a look at what the finished quad looks like. All right, so 3, 2, 1, boop! Alrighty, so here it is, and I gotta say, this thing is so much cooler than I had some small reservations about it, and I do have some things I want to discuss, but this thing is awesome, and I really love the way it looks too. I feel a little bit sad that I'm gonna have to tear it down to build it into a tricopter, but anyway, let's have a look at this, and you're gonna want to see these features. So I'm just gonna show you this this straight up. I'm turning on my Tyrannus here. Oh, thank you. And check this out. So I'm just gonna quickly plug a battery in right here. Alrighty. So look how cool that is. That is going to be fantastic. Alrighty, so that is so cool, having that tilt function. I can't wait to get outside and test that. Right, yeah, before we get this outside and we test that cool feature there, I'm going to talk about some things that I like about in the building process and some other things that I found a little bit tricky, or a little bit, not tricky, I guess, a little bit difficult because of some of the design features in here. Oh, and if you're wondering, geez, you're thinking, Stuart, gee, this is a pretty messy build. Well, I don't usually normally put this up the top here, and I'm about to strip this down anyway after a couple of test flights because I do want to build the tricopter. So please forgive my messy wiring in here. Anyway, let's start off and we'll have a look in the middle here. Alright, so there is this rod down the middle which controls this sort of tilt action. I'll see if I can show you a better shot of that. And because that runs across the entire bottom of the craft, it was very difficult to mount anything in here. So usually you can use all this space inside just here, but at the moment you can't actually put anything in here. So usually I have like a PDB on the bottom, or maybe you want to put your VTX or your receiver or even your ESCs. Any of that, all that, this whole rod through the middle takes up so much space. So I can totally understand why it has to be such a big frame. Now, another tricky thing about here, I'm sure that these arms are going to be very strong, but something that was a little bit difficult is, what do I do with these wires? Because they have to be very long, and I'm used to mounting ESCs on the arms, so that was a little bit of a design problem. And what I did want to do, and I think it might be possible, is to run the wires down the inside of the tube and out the middle of the quad just here for a super clean build, but you can't do that when your wires are this short, so that might be better. I'm going to have to extend those or something like that in some future builds, maybe when I do the try. Alright, now I do wish this frame had some better mounting solutions for the camera. What I've had to do, I've actually just taken mine and I've wrapped it in some foam and sort of squished it in there, made a nice carbon fiber sandwich. But what I wish they could do, they would incorporate some way to have a HS117 in there. I think that would be a lot better as well. Oh, and of course you can see I haven't put in all the screws or stuff because this is still just sort of testing it and making sure that it works. I did find there was no real place to run your battery lead out, so that's why I've got mine out to the side just here. And if you are going to build this one, maybe a little on-way VTX would fit nicely in here, but I actually found you don't actually have as much space as you might think you do because it's so big, because you've got these two pillars that I guess that run across through here, these two sort of injection molded plastic parts that are underneath here holding the arms in. They actually take up a lot of space and make it a little bit difficult to build. So even though it looks huge, there's not actually that much space in there. Now, setting the thing up was really easy, and this was my first time ever using servos, but they had some great instructions on their website, so I found that super easy, so that was fantastic. And they've got all the wiring diagrams up there as well, so it shows you not only how to do it in clean flight or beta flight or whatever you're using, but it also shows you how to wire up your servos. And at the back here, I've actually had to zip tie on an antenna, which is a bit of a shame because there is no way to run a pigtail out or anything like that. There's no real special consideration given to what's going to happen to your antenna or your VTX, so I wish they would incorporate that in future versions of the frame. Alright, now here's a question a lot of people are going to want to know, and quick, take your bets. How heavy do you think this bad boy is? Because I'm telling you, it is pretty hefty. It's a bit of a heifer right now, so we're going to put it on. It's coming in, this build, at 471 grams. I know it looks like 11, but trust me, that's 71 just there. So that is pretty heavy, and if this is designed to be a racer and you're trying to get those really fast speeds, and that's why it tilts the rotors forward, you might actually have a little bit of problems with how heavy this thing is. You're definitely going to need to be running a 4S battery to get the most out of it. And just as a comparison, I've got this build just here. So this one's 266 grams. So this 5-inch is about half the weight of this one. So you got to wonder, is the forward tilt sort of benefit that this quad really offers going to outweigh how much heavier it makes it? But anyway, that's enough chit chat from me. Let's get out and thrash this thing around, and we'll see just how it performs and how it goes when we tilt the motors. All right, so let's cut to some flight footage. Here it is out in the field, and I'm trying to fly around without the motors tilted at the moment, so I'm really struggling, and I think that's because of the angle of the camera. But look what happens as soon as I hit that switch. Right, I think it's soon. Here we go. I already hit it. I didn't change anything there, no stick inputs, just hit the switch, and it feels like a totally different beast. So it's got plenty of power when it's thrashing around with those forward tilted motors. Now, because it's so heavy, one thing I really did notice is just how much it sort of drifts when you're in the turns. And look, this is on tri-blades, and perhaps some quad blade props would be better for this one, but it really sort of, it really just feels like it's a bit drifty in the turns. I don't know how better to describe that, but it feels like when you're turning, it does not want to stop. It just wants to keep going in that one direction, and it takes a lot of effort to sort of change its orientation or its bearing. Also, I just want to apologise for that Velcro strap, which is on the right just there. You can sort of see, I didn't really have a better way to mount it there, so I thought this would make do for now, so sorry about that. But overall, I got to say, I was really impressed with how this thing performed. I really liked it with those forward tilting motors, and it actually felt like a rocket despite its weight. So it was much more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. A pretty rock solid quad, actually, just very heavy. So after checking out that flight footage, and I've got to say it really did make a massive difference. As soon as I flicked that switch to tilt these rotors forward, it felt like a totally different quad. So in that respect, I think that this quad does a fantastic job at what it's trying to do, and that is incorporate this sort of tilting rotor, that's hard to say, tilting rotor mechanism. But there are some things and some reservations I do have about this frame. Number one, just how heavy it is. I mean, I showed you on the scales before, and this thing is definitely pretty porky, a bit of a heifer, so it felt a little bit like the old days when I first built my quad and I had too much wire and just too many parts in there, and it was way too heavy. And you can definitely notice that it's a little bit sluggish, I guess, in the turns. Still got plenty of power when you punch it, especially on these motors, but in the turns you could definitely feel that it felt a little bit sluggish. And in some ways I kind of feel sorry for this quad because I can see what it's trying to do. It's really trying to push the envelope, and look, I'm all for engineering, I'm all for creative solutions to problems because this thing does want to go quicker, but I feel like it missed the boats in some parts. So it feels totally different to today's modern racer. It does feel a little bit like the ZMR or the Emax frame I have up there and things like that, but it feels totally different because on one hand, all these more modern frames, they've gone lighter, smaller profiles, pretty much trying to get the biggest props that they can with the most power and keeping it as light as possible. This bad boy, really, it's pretty heavy. It doesn't worry about how big it is, and the way it tried to combat that and pick up that extra speed was by tilting the rotors. Now, does that really pay off? Is it worth it going this way? Personally, I don't think so. I think you're much better. If you're after a racing quad, this is probably not the one for you. But if you are after a quad that, maybe it's not a first quad, maybe you're not after a racing quad, but after something a little bit different, I definitely think this one has tons and tons of character. I love the way that you can rotate the rotors and also how you can turn it into a tri, which is what we're going to be looking at next. Anyway, so that's part one of the review done, where we've looked at the quad. In part two, we're going to be looking at the tri and seeing, I've never done a tri before, so I'm pretty excited about that actually, and I might try putting some different motors on here because I know these motors are absolutely fantastic, so I'll be interested to see how it goes on maybe some smaller 1806 motors that will slot into these cups just here. Anyway, I'm going to leave you guys with some flight footage, but subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying! Doo -doo -doo -doo.